Jim Melnick is the other Melnick. There's two Melnicks. Jim Melnick is my brother from another mother.
I thought it was Olivier Jim Melnick.
No, you know Jim Melnick.
Wait, I invited the wrong guy.
I'm out of here.
What does J stand for? Middle name?
Jack.
Oh, I always thought that was just, okay.
That's okay, but there is a Jim Melnick. You know Jim Melnick. Okay. Jim Melnick and I are not related. He's a Gentile, I'm a Jew, and we have the same exact birthday. So every year on Facebook, a Melnick to a Melnick, we would wish each other happy birthday. So I got to let him know tomorrow. I'm going to call him and say, Jim, they're going to have to start calling you Olivier because I'm Jim now. So, well, it's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here. Texas is new to us. My wife and I moved here September. We found a little house in Rockwell on the other side, and we love it. We absolutely love it. For the longest time, I've been with a mission at Chosen People Ministries. There's a table in the front, puts little brochures over there if you want to pick one up. Been with a mission for 24 years, and I was serving as a Northwest Regional Director until we moved to the Southwest. So now, I'm serving as the Southwest Regional Director. So, but we love Texas, and I got to tell you, today I got a big confirmation that I'm in the right place. I spent the day at this event called the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast in downtown Dallas, and many speakers spent the whole day there, started at 7 o'clock this morning, and many speakers, but the three that I really touched my heart were Michelle Bachmann, Governor Greg Abbott, and Ted Cruz. I got to tell you, they love the Jewish people, they love Israel, and it blessed my heart. Because the day and age that we live in right now, it's hard to find friends of Israel. Really hard. Church or outside of church. It's becoming more and more of a rarity. So it just was an encouragement to me, and I felt even better being in Texas. I already love the people here. We feel right at home, but today was just a confirmation, so that was great. So normally, I've got to look at what time I started because, okay. Normally, I preach or I speak or I teach with a PowerPoint. But not tonight. So I have my notes. I always give away my notes. So if you're interested in getting the whole set of PowerPoint slides, don't take notes tonight. And I will send them to you if you pick up one of my cards on the front table and email me and say, please send your notes. I'll send them to you. And I'll send a set to Rabbi Jeff so that in case you need them, you can always ask him. So what I want to do, and I brought some props actually. I brought some things that I want you to take a look at if you're interested after, when I get to it, after the message tonight. I'll explain in a minute. So let me pray and we'll get started. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to share with this body of believers, brothers and sisters in Yeshua. Thank you for giving me a platform to share your word, to encourage and to hopefully teach a few things from your word, Lord, and so that we can move forward and continue to glorify you and reach the lost with the gospel. So thank you for giving me this privilege, this honor to be speaking tonight. And I pray that only your words would be spoken and that we would learn from it in Yeshua's name. Amen. So what I have for you is seven key biblical truths about Israel today. And I'm speaking to a Messianic congregation, so obviously some of it is going to be a refresher course. You're going to know some of it. But it's good to, review things. So the first thing, I always like to start with the covenants. And I'm going to spend just a few minutes on this because I got a lot more to share. But anytime I teach a class on anything that has to do with the Bible, I don't even tell the people. I'm actually flying next week to Idaho to teach a whole week-long class on Messianic prophecies. And the first thing I'm going to do is teach the kids. It's a gap year school, so I'm going to teach them on the covenants. I'm going to explain to them that God works with covenants throughout the Bible. There's 8 covenants in the Bible. 5 of them are with Israel. They're all made with mankind. 5 of them are with Israel. And of the 5 made with Israel, 4 are unconditional eternal covenant. Last time I checked, the word eternal meant forever. And which is, I have an issue with that coming later in the message. But you have 2 kinds of covenants, conditional and unconditional. The one I'm going to concentrate on for a few minutes here is the foundation of 3 other covenants that God made with Israel, which is the Abrahamic Covenant that we start reading about in Genesis 12. So, I'll give you the, again, you'll get the notes if you're interested, so don't take notes. The 8 covenants, so that you know, they're the Edenic, the Adamic, the Noahic, the Abrahamic, the Mosaic, the land, the Davidic, and the New. The land covenant for years used to be called the Palestinian covenant. For reasons that I will explain in a few minutes, not such a good word anymore. So, I like to call it the land covenant. But out of the Abrahamic covenant, we got the land, Davidic, and New Covenant as extensions of that covenant. And all those, except for the Mosaic, which was conditional on keeping the law, all those are unconditional. Unconditional is when God says, I will. It's based on God's character, not on Israel's performance. And thank God for that. Because our performance, if you want to read about the sins of the Jewish people and the sins of Israel, may I recommend a book? The Bible. It's all over. But God made this covenant unconditionally. He said, I will, I promise I will. And all throughout the Word, we see that He really is not going to renege on His promise. One of my favorite passages is in Jeremiah 31, 35 through 37. The end of that passage, he's talking about the new covenant made with the house of Israel and Judah. But at the end, he's talking about, if you can count to the enemies of Israel, if you can count the stars, measure the universe, size the moon and the sun, and this. I'm not quoting it verbatim, but that's basically it. Count the stars in the universe, measure, down deep and all in the heavens. Then I will forsake Israel, which of course it cannot be done. But at the end of that passage, it says, "For all that they have done to me, declares the Lord." And that little sentence is added there to remind the reader that it doesn't matter how bad Israel is behaving, as far as the unconditional covenants are concerned, it's based on God's character. That does not guarantee salvation. That's a different topic. But the promise of the land and the blessing, it's based on God's character. And that's what we need to remember. So, there are a lot of scriptures that are connected to, that connects the Abrahamic covenant, mostly in Genesis, of course. Genesis 12, Genesis 13, 15, 17. In Genesis 15, I enjoy quoting this now because in Genesis 15, this is the land boundaries that will be realized, fulfilled in the millennial kingdom. And until 6 months ago, it meant a lot to me, but now it means even more, because I used to always say, in the millennial kingdom, Israel will be twice the size of Texas. But now I live here, so it feels even more personal. But to give you an idea, twice the size of Texas, that's quite big. Right now it's about New Jersey. So you go from New Jersey to twice the size of Texas. I'm looking forward to that. So, and that's in Genesis 15, the land boundaries. So, again, I don't want to spend too much time on the first truth, which is the truth of the covenants, because most of you, if not all of you, already know that. The important part is, again, it's an unconditional covenant. It's a promise that God made to Israel and to the Jewish people, and it's not going to change. It cannot be taken away, and you cannot replace the people receiving the covenant with another people. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Truth number 2. Shocker. Ready? Israel is not Palestine. But you know that. But I want to help you understand a few things that maybe I'm hoping to be able to equip you to, when you have a discussion with somebody, when they say that, the Jews are occupying Palestine, things like that, you'll be able to actually say, well, actually, and give them a couple of things to think about. So let's talk about Palestine for a second. The land given by God to the Jewish people is known by many names, not just Israel and Judah. In the Bible, you read about Israel and Judah. In Genesis 17:8, it's the land of Canaan. In Genesis 50:24, it's the promised land. In Exodus 6:8, it's the land. There's many different names. Palestine actually shows up one time in the Bible. Did you know that? Most people say it's not in the Bible. I used to say that until recently. It shows up one time in the Bible in the King James Version in Joel 3:4. And it take it from the word Peleshet, translated into the word Philistia. For some reason, the word Philistia, which might have a connection with the Philistines, which is uncertain, but maybe, but the word Philistia is used that way several other places in the King James Bible. For some reason, in Joel 3:4, they translated it Palestine. I just cannot find anywhere why just in that verse it would say Palestine. But this being said, we can put that aside because really Palestine truly is not in the Bible. Except for that, I think this is a mistake in translation. The exact origin of the name Palestine is really debated. I tell people, and for shock value, I guess, I tell people, I have no problem calling Israel Palestine. And then I pause until I look at their face and they go like, really? You're Jewish? And until 1948. Let me explain why. What happened is that, and some of you probably already know that, AD 132 through 136 was the Bar Kokhba revolt, the Jewish revolt that took place against the Romans. Let me summarize it. We lost. And Israel was renamed Palestina, and Jerusalem was renamed Aila Capitolina, just to humiliate the Jews even more. And so basically that did not exist until 132, let's say 135, about 135. Before 135 AD, the word Palestine really did not exist as a connection to the land of Israel. And the name stuck. It stayed, and it became the name of the land that many scholars use. When you read old commentaries, it talks about Palestine. And so I'm used to it. I don't mind, because it used to describe a geographical area. And that I have no problem with that. I don't like the name because of what it's become. But if you use it to describe a geographical area, I don't have a problem. If you use it to describe a people group with a political agenda, I have a problem because that's made up. That's where I draw the line. So until 1948, we can call it Palestine if you want. But what's interesting, and I'm not going to show it to you from here because you won't see it, but I have this French dictionary. By the way, in case you did not detect the accent, I'm not from Texas originally. I was born in France. So in case you wanted to know. In this dictionary right here, 1939, so that's 9 years before Israel became a modern state, May 14th, 1948, 9 years before. In this yearly edition, every year, this is a 200th edition of the French dictionary. Every French family has one. There is a page with the flags. And it's interesting, you look at the German flag, it's got the red flag, and you can come and look at it closer. I'll have it at my table before I leave tonight, and be careful because it's 83 years old. Germany with a swastika in the middle of it, so that's 1939. We're in the middle of Second World War. The flag of Palestine, you would expect a red triangle with green, white, and black, as you see today on the news or on the internet, which, by the way, looks almost identical to the flag of Jordan. If you think about it, it's almost the same, and there's a reason for that. You look at the flag of Palestine here, 9 years before Israel was born. You draw a vertical line in the middle of the flag. On the left is a blue square. On the right is a white square. In the middle is a yellow Star of David. And under it, it says Palestine. Interesting, isn't it? 1939. So make sure you take a look at this. And in the description, I had to translate it for you because I'm sure not everybody, probably half of you speak fluent French, right? Right. But so I'll do the courtesy of doing it in English. But on the word Palestine in a dictionary, it says Palestine is part of Syria between Phoenicia in the north, the Dead Sea in the south, the Mediterranean Sea in the west, and Syria in the east. It is a narrow band of land between Lebanon and the Jordan River, also called the land of Canaan, the Promised Land, and more recently, the Holy Land in Judea. Today, it is a Jewish state under the British Mandate, 1939. They call it a Jewish state in that dictionary. The French were a lot more friendly to the Jews back then than they are today. Another thing that I have, let me see, I don't want to skip my... okay, another thing that I have is this coin. I want you to take a look at it. It's a coin from 1934. And it's, usually I show all this on the screen, but it's not working out tonight, so I have to spell it out. This little coin is a Palestinian 5 mils Palestinian coin. On one side it says Palestine, Palestina, and it says in Hebrew, Arabic, and English. Next to the Hebrew, it has 2 Hebrew letters in parentheses. Aleph, which looks like an X, and Yod, which looks like an apostrophe. Right now, it says the Hebrew word Palestine, and in a parenthesis, Aleph, Yod. Those are the 2 initials for 2 words. Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. 1934, 14 years before the creation of the modern state of Israel, the Palestinian coin said Eretz Israel, land of Israel. I don't make it up. History is right there in that little box. So make sure you take a look at it before you leave tonight. So that's the truth number 2, that that Israel is not Palestine, and Palestine is not Israel. But you know, most people today, even within the church, you have people that actually believe that Palestinians are real people. Listen, they need Yeshua just like anybody else. Okay, Palestinians, Arabs, Jews, we all lost, beyond lost, doomed and direction, damnation forever if we don't have Yeshua, if we don't give our life to Yeshua. Palestinian, Arab, Jews, anybody. It's the same for everybody. So number 3, truth number 3, replacement theology is not biblical. Replacement theology, you probably already know what it is, but I want to give you some quotes because it goes back. It was not called that back then, but replacement theology is the false doctrine that people promote, saying that the church has replaced Israel. Now, if that's true, then God is a liar, because he made eternal, unconditional covenants with the Jewish people. So he's a liar and a covenant breaker. And if he is a liar and a covenant breaker, then guess what? Maybe you're not saved. Maybe your relationship with God is based on something else. Maybe he changed his mind on free gift of salvation. So we know that God doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Amen? So we know that. But for some reason, and we're going back to the first century, early second century, late first century, early second century AD, okay? A lot of the early church fathers, the defender of the Christian faith, the ones who kind of structured it and defended it against heresy, they did a lot of good. Unfortunately, they also did a lot of damage when it comes to Israel and the Jewish people. And a lot of them, in their studying the Bible, did it allegorically, meaning not literally. They looked at the Bible, and looking at the Bible allegorically is like, well, it means this to me, but maybe it can mean something else to you. And maybe tomorrow I could look at it and say, oh, it means something a little different. No. I'm convinced that the Bible is the same for everybody. You either understand it or you don't, but it's the same. It's got to mean the same for everybody. Otherwise, the sky's the limit. If it could mean something different for everybody in this room, then where do we go from there? But some of those church fathers studied the scriptures allegorically. For instance, Justin Martyr, in a dialogue with Trypho, said that the church replaces Abraham's descendants in God's covenants. Right there, he's talking about the Jewish people here. the church replaced the Jewish people. It's not called replacement theology back then, but that's what it is without a name. A little later, Tertullian, through the edict of the divine utterance, the prior and greater people, that is, the Jewish, must necessarily serve the less, and the less people, that is, the Christian, overcome the greater. So basically, the Christians have taken over. That's what he's saying. And Origen, another church father, the Jewish nation was driven from its country, and another people was called by God to the blessed election. You have this. So what happens is you have church fathers. Again, they did a lot of good. Okay, I'm not saying they're not to be studied. We get a lot of good from the church fathers. But you get things like this, and it establishes a foundation for looking at Israel as a thing of the past. God is done with the Jews. The church has replaced the Jews now. And back in those days, people were not really educated except for the bishops and the priests and the popes. The rest of the people were just listening, when they listened, to whatever came from the pulpit. So if you're taught that God is done with Israel, then starts this resentment for the people, for the chosen people. And then slowly but surely, over 2,000 years of Jewish history, you see it punctuated by acts of anti-Semitism. And actually, a lot of it, I won't have time to cover it all tonight, a lot of it is in this book that I have on the back table, End Times Anti-Semitism. There's a whole history of anti-Semitism all the way to today. So you might be interested in picking up a copy. Replacement theology, if replacement theology was valid, again, God might have changed his mind on your salvation. Think about that. A good verse to start when people tell you, well, I believe that God is not against the Jews, but now really the blessings are going to the church. You have to notice something. When somebody tells you this, they usually tell you that the blessings have been transferred to the church, but the curses, the Jews can keep them. It's just the blessings. They don't say it that way, but they think it that way. A good verse to start the conversation is 1 Corinthians 10:32. It's in the context of eating food, what's allowed, what's not allowed. That's the proper context. But the people group that are described in that verse, very interesting. It says, give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or Gentiles or to the church of God. Wait a minute. If the church has replaced the Jews, why do we talk about those two groups in that verse? We shouldn't. That's because the church has not replaced the Jews. So that's a good verse to start the conversation with your friend who's saying, we're replacing Israel now. Another way to do is to take the, I think it's between 70 and 76, I always forget the number, it's in the 70s, times in the New Testament where you see the word Israel, and take that word and put the word church, and see if in the context of that verse or paragraph, if it makes any sense. You're going to have to make some serious theological gymnastics to make it work. It's just not going to make any sense. So those are two things that you need to consider. So that's truth number 3, replacement theology isn't biblical. Now, number 4, Israel is accused of two things. And one is ethnic cleansing, and the other one is apartheid. So ethnic cleansing. What is ethnic cleansing? Ethnic cleansing or genocide is intentional, organized mass murder to eradicate a people group. That's what ethnic cleansing is. Examples, the Armenian genocide, that was ethnic cleansing. Or of course, the Shoah, the Holocaust. That's another ethnic cleansing. Now, in 1947, right before Israel was reborn as a nation, there were about 1.2 million Arabs in British Mandate Palestine. Today, there's about 6 million Arabs in the whole land, including 1.8 million, probably a little more, because those numbers, I think, are about a couple years old. I couldn't find anything more recent. 1.8 million in Israel alone. There are more Arabs in Israel today than there were in 1947. Last time I checked, this is the opposite of ethnic cleansing. Why is it that the world is buying this lie that Israel is committing ethnic cleansing? There's more Arabs today. And guess what? There's still less Jews in the world today than there were before the We haven't got back to the 18 million that we had before the Holocaust. That was ethnic cleansing. It's crazy. The other one is the part of truth number 4, Israel is not committing ethnic cleansing and is not committing apartheid. What is apartheid? It was South Africa's way of keeping blacks and whites separated, and as such it forbade blacks to eat in white restaurants or cafes, attend white schools or universities, be treated in white hospitals, live in white neighborhoods, or serve in white government. That's what apartheid was. Last time I went to Israel was 2019. I took a group there, and like it happens once in a while, one of our ladies on the group fell. If you've been to Israel, she slipped on the long steps, very, very shallow and long steps right in front of the Damascus gate. There, if you don't pay attention, and she was not, she's a dear friend of mine, she was not paying attention, she slipped and she hurt her back. So I spent the last day with her at Hadassah Hospital, not too far from there. And it was the day we were supposed to go back, and I thought for sure I'd miss my flight. We didn't. But here's the point I'm trying to make. We got to the hospital. She was in total pain, and it was my first experience in an Israeli hospital. That was an experience, because in America, you bring the patient, they take it, and you just wait until they come back. In Israel, you have to take the patient everywhere. That was amazing. But the triage nurse was a Palestinian woman with the whole Muslim garb. And she was receiving patients, some that had to be taken care of right away because they could die. She was a Palestinian woman that Israel trusted in having the job of a triage nurse. That's not apartheid. That's the opposite of it. I saw it. I mean, I knew before that it was true, but I just lived through it. I saw it. It was beautiful. Israeli Arab, they're full citizens who do not experience any of the restrictions of the South African black population. It's very different. So again, ethnic cleansing and apartheid, they're lies. People don't check the facts. They go for the underdog, whoever looks, if it looks bad, they must be right. See, what happened with this new anti-Semitism is that the perpetrators and the victims have been flipped. The victims were the Jewish people, and the perpetrators were the Nazis back in 80 years ago. And now in the Middle East, we've got the Jews who are now considered to be the new Nazis of the Middle East. And the Palestinians are the victims. It's completely flipped in the public eye, but it's not true. Now, here's a quote by Mahmoud Abbas, the current leader of the Palestinian Authority. I mean, the man can be trusted. He's a very ethical man in his 16th or 17th year of a 4-year term. So he can be trusted. And this is his quote. It's very short. "I will never allow a single Israeli to live among us on Palestinian land." Now that's apartheid. But you don't see this on the news. You see the other side, which is a lie. Now, the accusations of ethnic cleansing or apartheid are excuses to justify the anti-Semitic actions of a movement known as BDS, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions. You've heard of that? BDS, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions. And it became people were more aware of it with Ben and Jerry's. Because Ben and Jerry's didn't wanted to boycott, and then they got in trouble for it. They're still trying to deal with it. So that's what happened. That was a good way of dealing with it. But a lot of brands, a lot of corporations, a lot of artists, a lot of famous people are trying to boycott Israel. The latest one, I think in the last couple of days, is the Sierra Club decided that they were going to cancel their organized trip to Israel because they were getting too much pressure from the BDS movement saying you should not go to the people that are killing Palestinians. So they said, we're going to cancel everything. Artists are canceling things all the time. under the pressure of the BDS movement. Now, BDS was started in 2005 through the efforts of Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian Authority, and another man by the name of Omar Barghouti. Omar Barghouti was born in Qatar, but he is the big promoter of BDS. He's the voice of BDS, really, today. And what I find fascinating is that he did all of his studies, all the way to his PhD, in Tel Aviv. Well, I think it's Tel Aviv. Where is Bar Ilan? Is it Tel Aviv? Yeah, in Bar Ilan University. So he's got a degree from a Jewish university, but it's probably not to be kept, because we should boycott that too, right? You see, that's a problem with the BDS movement. They are not consistent. I have no problem with boycott. I have in my own life, I do boycott. I have things that I boycott. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I think it's a personal thing. But there are movie directors that I boycott. There are artists, actors. If they don't tell me what they think and they're good actors, I don't care. Entertain me. But don't become a politician and tell me all of a sudden in between movies that you don't like Israel and we should do this against Israel. If you do that, I'm not interested anymore. So boycott is, I boycott other things for other reasons. Boycott is not a bad thing. But if you're going to boycott, be consistent. Don't boycott every day of the week except for Tuesdays, because on Tuesdays it doesn't work for me and I need to do this that I'm not doing for the rest of the week. It's kind of like people saying, do you keep kosher? Yeah, I keep kosher except outside the house. Really? Okay. Interesting. So if you're going to boycott, be consistent. But guess what? They cannot afford to be consistent because a lot of the technology and the inventions that come that we have, that we benefit from, are from Israel. The technology that you find in just about all the cell phones, the thumb drive, some of the Intel chip for the computers, they originated from Israeli ingenuity and inventions. So if you see somebody who's promoting the BDS movement and they're talking to somebody on a cell phone, they're a hypocrite. But it's not convenient. They tell you to boycott the Jaffa oranges and all the Israeli brands. So what I do, this is your answer to BDS. Okay? Boycott, divestment, sanction. I say the Christian answer is buy, defend, and support. And the way we do it, super simple. Go to the BDS, I think it's bdsmovement.org or bds.org. There's several websites. Go to, they've done their homework. They put a list together and they say, this is what you should never buy because it's all the stuff that's made in Israel. There you go. You got the list. You know what to buy now. They've done the homework for you. Just go there and, whatever you see, I can use that. like different products that you might not even know are Israeli or from Israel or connected to Israel. They're all there on their websites. So that's the BDS movement. It probably started even before the boycott of Jewish things. In my book, I think it started as early as 1938, which is the November 9th and 10th. The night between November 9th and 10th of 1938 is the night of broken glass, known as Kristallnacht. And you could say that really that's where you start seeing some public, vocal, and lethal, unfortunately, boycott and pogroms against the Jewish people, mostly in Germany at that time, but it developed into much more. So that was truth number 4. Israel is not committing ethnic cleansing or apartheid, and a little bit on BDS as well. Truth number 5. Hey, we're doing good. Am I doing good? I don't know what I'm supposed to be done. I'll know what I'm supposed to be done because your rabbi told me you can speak as long as you want, but at such a time we'll all walk out. So when I see you walk out, I know I'm done. Okay? So be kind, okay? I'm almost done. Truth number 5, Jewish people will be regathered in the land. Now, I think that if you were to say beyond the shadow of a doubt, if somebody was to ask you today, tell me a prophecy in our lifetime from the Bible that you've seen or that you see that it's actually you can grab it from the scriptures and take it to the bank. This one, Israel being regathered in the land, in unbelief at first. That's the one that we're living through it right now. We are living through it right now for the last, since 1948 or even before, because the first Aliyah, the immigration back to the land in the late 1800s. But really, since Israel became a modern nation, we're starting to see the push for coming back to the land. And of course, for the most part, not everybody, but for the most part, in unbelief. But this is going to continue. And I don't know I know that anti-Semitism has a big part to play. I mean, in my 20 years of study on anti-Semitism, I see that, like for instance, since 2015, even maybe a little before, huge amount of, large number of Jewish people out of France. I got a lot of connection from, I'm from France, so I got a lot of connection back there. So I have a better understanding of what's happening in Europe, mostly because of what's happening in France. And I think that 50,000 Jews left in the last 15 years. 50,000 Jews, just France, to go to Israel. And they don't all stay there because to live there is not that easy. But many of them are still there. 50,000 Jews. 2015 was the attack on the kosher supermarket. You remember that? The Paris supermarket? Like 3 days of terrorist attacks. And the supermarket is on the edge of Paris. And touching the supermarket on the other side of it is a town called Saint-Mandé, which is where I was raised my whole life. My parents' house is about 500 yards from that supermarket. My niece's house was 50 yards from the supermarket. She was in that supermarket shopping for Shabbat 15 minutes before the man walked in and locked the doors and kept the 40 hostages and ended up killing 4 people. When that happened, I called my mother. I was in Seattle at the time. I called my mother. She was at the time, I think maybe 85 or 86. She passed away when she was 92, and I had the privilege of leading her to the Lord right before she passed away. Her and my dad, it was incredible. That's for another time. I don't want to tell you. The story would take too long, but they were both with the Lord. My mother lost her dad when she was 15. He was taken by the Gestapo, and he died in Auschwitz. She saw that happen in front of her eyes, and then she was taken to the south of France to hide on a farm. If you go to my YouTube channel, there is that little news reel about the story of my mother when she reconnected with that family 70 years later. And I put it there. Go visit. Put my name on YouTube. You'll find it. And so she lost her dad when she was 15. Traumatic, obviously. He was taken by the Gestapo, killed in Auschwitz. I called my mother when that thing is happening 500 yards from where she is. She's living alone. My dad's already passed away. My sister, who lives in the area, called her and said, "Mom, lock the door. We'll come get you when it's safe." I called my mom from Seattle, and I said, "Mom, are you going to be okay?" She starts crying, and she goes, "Olivier, are they coming back for us?" She was 85. She lived through the traumatic event of losing her dad when she was 15 to the Gestapo, and she's 85. 70 years later, she's going, "Are they coming back for us?" I didn't know what to say. It was very, very scary. So from that point on, a lot of Jews basically just, okay, we're done. And a lot of Jews today, still in France, but they say France is done for the Jews. It's going to be very interesting, the elections coming in June. It could change a lot of things, not for the better, for the Jewish community of France. By the way, number 1 community of Jews in the world, Israel, of course. Number 2, U.S. Number 3, France. Close to 500,000 Jews. Number 3, France. So keep the Jews of France in your prayers. So truth number 5, regather to the land. Look at this passage of Ezekiel 36, 22 through 28. "Therefore say to the house of Israel, thus says the Lord God, it is not for your sake, O house of Israel, that I am about to act, but for the sake of my holy name, which ye have profaned among the nations, to which you came, and I will vindicate the holiness of my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, in which you have profaned among them. And the nations will know that I am the Lord, declares the Lord God, when through you I vindicate my holy... I think I got it. No, I didn't get it. There's a fly here. I got it. And the nations will know that I am the Lord, declares the Lord God, when through you I vindicate my holiness before their eyes. So from this we get that, again, it is not for your sake, but for the sake of my holy name. So God's actions are, I said that before, based solely on His character. And that's good. It's not based on our performance. And that's really good. I don't know about you, but if it was based on my performance, not good. God is well aware that Israel falls short. Well aware. But His covenants are His covenants. God uses the Jewish people to show His faithfulness. When the nations here, it says, and the nations will know that I am the Lord, declares the Lord, when through you I vindicate my holiness before their eyes. So God uses the Jewish people to show His faithfulness. Seriously, we should not exist today. If it was not the Jews, if it was not for the grace of God, we should not exist. But here we are. And God will not renege on His unconditional and eternal covenants. So that's the Jewish people being regathered to the land. Look at we continue with the passage here. I will take you from the nations and gather you from all the countries and bring you into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from all your uncleanness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you. So here, God said, I will take you from the nations. So that tells us that we're shocker, we're in the nations, we're in the diaspora. Well, that's what it tells us. God has sent the Jewish people into the diaspora. Everywhere. There's only 15 million of us, and it seems like there's Jewish people everywhere. Okay? It's not a bad thing. God promised to regather the Jewish people. That's what we get from that text. He's actually regathering the Jewish people into the land. But to do that, you had to have the land available. Well, that became available officially in 1948. There was a series of events in history, the Balfour Declaration in 1917, the San Remo Declaration in 1920. Don't have time to go through that. But those were setting the stage for the 1948 rebirth of Israel as a modern nation. Now, some people ask me, when I teach on anti-Semitism, they say, do you think the birth of Israel in 1948 was a result of the Holocaust? Maybe. I mean, I'm sure it's connected, but it's at some level it's connected, but I'm not sure it's 100%. The reason, but I'll leave it at that. So then let me continue with the passage here of what is it that I give you? Ezekiel 36, 22 through 28, the end of the passage, which is the best part. And I will give you a new heart and a new spirit I will put within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules. You shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God. So God will give the Jewish people a new heart and a new spirit at that time. God will cause the Jewish people to follow and obey Him and never uproot Israel again. This is coming. This is coming. So that's number 5. Truth number 5. Jewish people will be regathered in the land. Truth number 6. A little bit bad news before more good news. Israel and the tribulation. Okay, I don't know about you. I'll tell you where my biblical understanding is that there's going to be a rapture. There's going to be a 7-year tribulation that will last for 7 years. And a millennial kingdom that will last approximately 1,000 years. And then the eternal order. Okay, that's the second coming of Yeshua at the end of the tribulation, and then the millennium, and then the eternal order. You cannot forget the second coming. We're in trouble if He's not coming back. But He is, amen? So, what's going to happen during the tribulation? Well, unbelieving Israel will go through the Great Tribulation, also known as the time of Jacob's trouble. Jeremiah 30 verse 7 calls it the time of Jacob's trouble. So what's going to happen, and I don't like this verse. I do not like this verse of the Bible, but it's there. And I know all of us, when we read our Bible, we get to a place when we go like, I really could do without that passage in my life, or without that verse. Here is one I don't like. Zechariah 13, 8 and 9. In the whole land, declares the Lord, 2/3 shall be cut off. This is coming at the end of the tribulation. Declares the Lord, 2/3 of the Jewish people will be cut off and perish, and 1/3 shall be left alive. And I will put this third into the fire and refine them as one refines silver and test them as gold is tested. They will call upon my name. I will answer them. I will say they are my people, and they will say the Lord is my God. So by the end of the great tribulation, the time of Jacob's trouble, the time of chastising of Israel, when God resumes his program on Israel, 2/3 of the Jewish people will perish. There's no way to look at this and see it any other way. If it was to happen today, 15 million Jews in the world, 10 million Jews would perish if this was the tribulation. But this is not. I don't think we'll be here for tribulation. We'll be raptured before. That's what I believe. But here's the point. 10 million is a lot. I was reading this one day, and my wife asked me, because I was reading this and I was troubled. She goes, what's going on? I said, well, I'm reading this and there's no way around it. And she goes, what? And I read the passage through and I go like, if it has happened today, it's 10 million. And she goes, well, you don't know that. And I go, what do you mean? So Ellen is her name, the great theologian Ellen. She says, read it again out loud. So I read it again out loud. In the whole land, declares the Lord, 2/3 shall be cut off and perish, and 1/3. And I kept reading. And I go, so? She goes, did God give you a number? No. But God can give us numbers. It's all over the Bible. Exact numbers. The 144,000, the 12 tribes, the 40 days, the 6 days of creation. It's all numbers. But here he says percentage. 2/3, 1/3. So I go, so what? She goes, so the more Jewish people hear about the gospel and come to a saving knowledge of Yeshua, the smaller the number. I smiled. I said, you're right. This is brilliant. And she doesn't even have a Bible degree. That was great. That was several years ago. And so now I look at this passage, and this is an encouragement to me and to you to share the gospel with my people, because the more people we share the gospel and accept Yeshua, the smaller the percentage. And guess what? I believe we're in that time of our history that if you share the gospel with a Jewish person, and at the point where you're sharing, they are rejecting the message, you're still planting a seed. And I'm not dating anything because we don't know when the rapture will take place, but you could be sharing right now about the gospel and planting a seed in the heart of one of 144,000. We could be living in those days. So you'll be planting a seed into the heart of a Jewish person that will become saved during the tribulation and will become a great servant of God reaching out to the world. Think about that. So this is really important that we continue our sharing of the gospel with the Jewish people. We can't stop. So under truth number 6, Israel in a tribulation, and I truly have very little. Am I doing good on time? Well, you're still here. Thank you. Okay, truth number 6, Zechariah, another passage in Zechariah 12:10. I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and pleas for mercy, so that when they look on me, on him whom they have pierced, they shall mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and weep bitterly over him as one weeps over a firstborn. For the longest time, I used to tell people at the end of the tribulation is when, and I still believe that, at the end of the tribulation is when Yeshua returns, the second coming of Messiah. The rapture, he comes in the sky, the saints will join him, he doesn't land. At the end of the tribulation, he comes down, Mount of Olives splits in half, come back with the saints. 2 different events. When he returns, I used to tell people, that's when the number of Gentiles, from Romans 11, that we have reached the number of Gentiles that are supposed to be saved. When that number is reached, that's when he comes back. But no, that's part of it. But he comes back, Yeshua, when Israel says, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is you, comes in the name of the Lord. That's when he returns. To a lot of Christians there, to you, it's probably not, in this congregation, it's probably not a mystery. But to a lot of Christians that I speak to in churches, I tell them, Jesus is not coming back unless Israel calls him to come. at the end of the tribulation. That's what the word tells us. And guess what? Who doesn't want Yeshua to come back more than anybody else? Satan. You know why? Because when Yeshua returns, Satan's career is over. And he doesn't like his retirement plan. So he's going to do everything he can to stop the Jewish people from calling on Yeshua. And he is the creator. He is the one behind anti-Semitism outside the church and inside the church. And of course, he's the master deceiver. So Satan is able to make the irrational sound and look rational. That's why you have anti-Semitism right now from people that, you see today, just one example, the liberal left and radical Islam. Now you put a radical leftist and a radical Muslim in the same room, only one will come out. And probably not the leftist. That sounds racist, but okay. They don't agree on anything. Ideologically, a liberal leftist and a radical Muslim do not agree ideologically on anything except the destruction of Israel. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's completely irrational, but it's what's happening in our day and age. There's just one example. So that's truth number 7. Actually, that was truth number 7. I forgot to tell you. Israel ushers in the second coming when they call upon Yeshua, which is also based on Matthew 23, 37 through 39. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. That is what Yeshua is waiting for. And so that's what's going to happen at the end of the tribulation. So the 7 points that I tried to share with you today was Israel is in a covenantal relationship with God. Israel is not Palestine. Israel has not been replaced by the church. Israel is not committing ethnic cleansing or apartheid. Israel will be regathered into the land in unbelief. Israel will suffer during the tribulation. And Israel will usher in the second coming of Messiah. And that's, I don't know, I'm doing on time. Did you want to open it for Q&As or we're done? No? Okay, we're done. So let me give it back to you. And if you have questions, you can come see me at the table. Thank you.